need to AIs to learn on.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Well, that's kind of interesting and disturbing. So, hello, happy Monday. Solid Ground live stream number 31. And Deborah was just talking about something about Zoom harvesting data for AI training, which is super creepy. And I'd love to hear more about that. David, you want to start us off with Solid Ground?
The
Blurb.
Yes. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice, CSJ, aka woke, and or COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 per month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note, Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
And hello, Andra Boudreau. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, we do this live stream every Monday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is 1 p.m. Eastern. And what time in UK there, David?
6 p.m. in the UK.
Okay.
And the associated time zones or countries.
So thanks for being here, everybody. And so what's the creepy news with AI and Zoom and what's going on?
I realize that this is some tweet and I haven't verified if this person is even like real. But I saw this tweet today. It said Zoom's terms of service now require you to allow AI to train on all your data, audio, facial recognition, private conversations, unconditionally and irrevocably with no opt-out. So that's kind of, I'm looking at then they kind of highlighted with a little highlighter where it says in the terms of service, and it says, you consent to Zoom's access, use, collection, creation, modification, distribution, processing, sharing, maintenance, and storage of service-generated data for any purpose.
Wow.
And so some of the purposes could be, quality assurance, analytics, and then it says machine learning or artificial intelligence, including for the purposes of training and tuning of algorithms and models. So that's
wow.
what it says.
Was there a word like censorship in there? I didn't hear anything.
No.
No, but that's creepy because I think a lot of people use Zoom for private meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're consenting to distribution and the use of all content that's generated, so does that mean that by using it, they're recording it and they could redistribute things, or what does that mean for people who are using it for supposedly private, ostensibly private conversations?
It doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't sound good.
The only thing that potentially sounds good is if, insofar as people are being concerned that AI have been training on a lot of, like, say, woke material, that then say you go to ChatGPT and you ask it, what do you think of affirmative action or something, like, and it might say that was terrible, that it was over because it was training only on people talking with one sort of point of view. Like, the only plus of it, I don't like anyone in a private conversation, but if private conversations are actually talking about a greater array of things, then I'm like, at least the AI is informed with more perspectives than it might have otherwise been. But I don't want the invasion of our privacy just to accomplish that.
Well, you know what? This is something I've heard people talking about, being concerned about what AI is being informed by. And so if AI has one, if AI is being trained on one sort of ideological set of opinions, then what is the danger of that? The danger seems to me that then if people are looking to it as a resource, the resource is biased. But doesn't that overlook other dangers of AI? Because if AI, what is the point of AI anyway? And if it's just a glorified Wikipedia, then, if we all know that Wikipedia is an unreliable resource. So if we look at AI as that, then I don't really see how that's such a concern. I mean, people need to know that their resource is biased. But what else are the potential issues with AI? It seems like it's not merely what kind of resource it is for humans, but also what it's being used for more broadly. I mean, what other concerns are there around AI?
I have a lot, but I want to hear from other people because I could just gab.
I think making a lot of jobs obsolete, because AI is basically it's basically able to mimic the problem solving capabilities of human beings. And so it's making some jobs obsolete. And I think that's a concern for a lot of people. That's one of the biggest concerns that I've heard discussed.
What do you think, David?
Well, I mean, I've heard in sort of a few discussion groups I'm in about the way that sort of algorithmic bots are being used to censor chat functions or kind of even workplace kind of online communities. And this is leading to, you know, those bots can kind of flag when someone uses words and, you know, regardless of the context that they're in. And I don't know, I'm just listening to that Zoom thing and I'm thinking, what if someone decides there are certain words that can just never be said? There are certain things that should never be discussed, you know? It reminds me a little bit of when a friend of mine who works at Amazon sort of said that Amazon were decided to put together sort of a staff platform in which they could talk freely about things because it was seen as something that would be beneficial to their ongoing well-being, to have a place to talk about Amazon more freely. But as soon as they put it in, they started getting nefarious ideas, which is to start flagging when words like unionize and union kind of came up. And suddenly people were getting flagged by their seniors and being asked about certain things. And obviously the whole thing fell apart and trust in the organization plummeted as a result. So I just wonder, you know, you kind of wonder in what hands some of this stuff is going, really.
So it's just kind of like this heavy surveillance and being used for censorship purposes or for keeping people within certain boundaries.
Like, yeah. Like, can we even say for sure, like, there are words that should never be used? Are there words that we should just write off human existence? You know, you'll never need to, you shouldn't say this word, or you shouldn't use this phrase. You know, I know that there are some people who said those things recently in a community group, and I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, David, we were in a discussion without naming names of someone at their workplace who had, was it, I don't know if it was in their Slack channel, what was it where they were correcting their language? Do you remember the details of that?
I'm not sure I remember the details.
What is it? I don't remember this.
It wasn't with us. It was another group that we email chain that we're on.
Okay.
And the workplace had instituted something where there was, I don't know if there was like language correction. I forget what it was. And it was something related with the government. I don't want to say which or where or whatever, but that was a bit concerning.
Yeah, it was public sector, wasn't it? Yeah.
Interesting.
You know,
Well,
for me, go ahead.
No, Deborah, go ahead, Deborah.
One of my many concerns about AI, it's funny because I have my brother-in-law is so excited about all of this, and he does a lot of creative work, and he actually feels like it's going to help him with his work because he can, if you can come up with good prompts, say for Chat GPT, you can produce some things that he used to take maybe weeks for actually an artist to do like a rendering of a drawing of something. He could just use Midjourney or one of the, I forget what they're all called, right? And within 5 seconds, like he has this thing, and then they can make a product out of it. We can make a t-shirt, we can make whatever. And so it's speeding things up. He doesn't have to pay somebody to do something. He was an architect at one point too. So as someone who can potentially imagine things and knows how to give good directions, he feels like it's a plus. I think one of my concerns is, and it's not just with AI, it's with everything, we were losing our ability to know how to do things. I mean, like people without maps, right? People don't know how to get anywhere. People probably don't even know where north is anymore, if they're just walking around. People don't know how to calculate and do math on a piece of paper. People don't know how. So the more you outsource to a thing to do, one, humans just become less valuable, but we also just become less capable in my mind. And I get concerned about how this sort of intersects also with, I used to kind of think, oh, universal basic income. That sounds kind of good. But I even worried with that about if people, again, suddenly didn't know how to like do or make anything. I think human beings need to be creative in doing, but now, especially with government, debanking and things like that, I get more nervous about if we're not like earning our own income or whatever, and then there's universal income, and then they go, well, you said the wrong thing, so now we're not going to pay you, and that's going pretty multiple steps out. But I'd rather keep us being capable.
Yeah, I
as
would
people.
too. The automation is, I think it's really concerning. Like the automating of like one example is just going to the grocery store and having the self-checkout, right? Like that's the most real life example of how we see it like routinely. And I'll always stand in the long line to avoid the self-checkout, but I wonder at some point, are they just going to eliminate human cashiers altogether and there won't even be that long line? I was at Home Depot or Lowe's or one of those with my boyfriend recently, and we were in line and he was saying, why don't we just go to the self-checkout? And because it's kind of long. And I'm like, no, because we're going to interact with a real person. We're just going to do this. And so we wait in this long line, and we ended up having this really delightful conversation with this really charming young woman who was behind the checkout. And it was like, she complimented my earrings, and then I complimented something about her. And then we had this whole conversation about it. And as we're leaving, he's giving me this look like, I know you're going to say, I told you so. And I'm like, yeah. But there's some, I've wondered about the telehealth thing. You know how during COVID, everything went telehealth. So all the doctors are doing these, and I used to think, how could you see your doctor on a screen? How could you take medicine remote? Doesn't the doctor need to check your vitals and, see you? And like, that's a human to human interaction. If there ever was one, don't they need to have you there? And we found out through COVID that people are accepting medicine remotely. They're accepting that anyway. So at this point, really, what is your, you must have to go in for some kind of an exam periodically, but you can do so much of your management through just virtual consultation. And I was thinking, as I was in graduate school, and I don't know what your training is like, David, in regard to therapy, but there's so much that's being broken down into technical bits that I almost feel like they're going to start implementing AI therapy and AI medicine, AI consults, and who's going to accept that? I imagine a lot of people will accept something like that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing COVID taught us in some ways was that there's a lot of people who maybe sometimes maybe require a bit of a push to go out and see someone in person. They don't necessarily want to have to do that, but people too easily will be able to say, that's okay, I can just ask an AI, I can just ask a bot about my problems. It's like one step along from, say, Googling your issues on Google and saying, and thinking, oh, I've got the answer I need. It's kind of one step beyond that, but not much further, is it? And I think AI is already doing that. I already know, I've spoken to a clinical psychologist who's very interested in trying to implement some widespread solution that's more digital. And I thought it just sounded so untherapeutic. And it's almost as if people have forgotten this stuff, right? Like people have forgotten how important it is to have these, and maybe COVID is a part of that. We've kind of just gotten used to doing it because people can fit things more into their busy schedules now.
Do you know what the irony of that too is? That like when I was studying counseling, one thing that kept being stressed in all of the literature is the importance of the therapeutic relationship, the importance of the rapport. It doesn't matter what modality you're using. It doesn't matter what philosophy the therapist was trained from. The thing that matters most in terms of the healing and the experience for the client is the relationship.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to turn things into this AI experience where you can just consult a bot, then you've completely eliminated something that we know is the most important aspect, and you've just distilled it down to moving parts, ones and zeros.
Maybe that's the next thing we need to do, realizing the importance and power of old-fashioned, not even old-fashioned, is it? God, I'm already doing it a disservice. Normal therapy. Why is it so important? Why is it? It's not, people have lost sight of it. It's not just curing your anxiety. It's not just fixing this. It's not just that. I think maybe we need to remember why that is. Why is it therapy works? Kind of, yeah.
I don't know if you guys watch Jonathan Peugeot. He has the Symbolic World podcast. And a couple of weeks ago, he said that I think as a teenager, maybe, or 11, I don't know, somewhere in that tween or teen, came home from school with some sort of, I don't know if it was asking the kid or asking the parents, given the mental health issues that are happening with youth these days. It was basically like, how would you feel if we got an AI to sort of be like, help your kid with their mental health? It was like surveying parents or something, like as though they were like, this might be a good idea, that we have all these kids in need. So what if we all just gave them an AI, right? And it was like, oh, it was so horrifying.
Well,
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, you're so lonely. Let's just give you a computer instead of trying to fix what we're doing to separate human beings from each other. Let's just give you something electronic to make up for it.
Oh God. And
it's like the wire monkey experiment, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, David, I cut you off.
No, that's a great point. I was just thinking, like, it's this so it's social media and the online world that's fueling this problem in the first place. More and more people are looking at normal ranges of emotion, a falling out with someone, a breakup, kind of ranges, things that we have to learn to become resilient of, because that's life. Life has its ups and downs, but people are pathologizing it with sort of medical language or over psychological therapizing language. Mm-hmm. And then maybe if the problem's being created in this way, and then the solution is also some completely non-human AI as a result. It's one thing feeding the other.
Yeah, it's over-engineering.
Oh, sorry. It makes me think we're forgetting the value of humans and the value of being human together, because AI really, it can't replace that. It can't offer that same level of connection and presence.
Yeah. We're going to need to do it. It's going to be a wire mother, and then it'll be a computer mother. We'll try. We need some more experiments to go on, I think.
Just hope they don't put soft, fuzzy stuff on top of a robot. That's enough.
That's enough.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like, these said soft, fuzzy stuff on top of a robot.
Oh, you're reminding me, and I wish I could, how he phrased it. One of the pieces that came out about once ChatGPT came out, everyone was having an opinion about good or bad. And the guy that, one of the guys that was involved in the social network or analyzing some, Jordan Hall, gave a talk on some of the concerns about, this new AI. And how do you describe it? It was something about where it's tending towards is almost to be replacing intimacy, because the ways people are getting asked questions or what they're even surveying for, they're trying to figure out like your deepest needs or your deepest feelings or things like that, and then try to give that back to you, and then you feel gotten, you feel seen, by your Amazon recommendation list or something like that. And that was really concerning to me. I don't know who designs any of these things, but if the way it wasn't just like recognition or being, I'm trying to think what social media kind of provided. It was like this next step where it's kind of moving into these very more private areas and our more primal sensibilities or something like that. And that they were concerned about that particular like angle of approach with technology.
And what would they get suggested? Sorry, as a result, what would be given to them?
I'm not. I need to go back and look at this. Maybe I'll link to the actual conversation like in the comments or something on this, or I can give Leslie it for the show notes. But so I feel like I'm not doing justice to the point of it, but it was as though I don't know if anyone's sitting there intentionally doing it, but just the ways that AI is designed, the types of information that people are getting or giving, try to making people feel, there's something about making people feel more gotten or more met or more something like in some of these designs. And it might have been initially just like, well, we're doing customer service and we want to be better at it. Like they weren't necessarily thinking we're getting into your mind and now you're going to be confused between us and a relationship. Like, I don't know if anyone thought that, but it is, when then you think about like, say, the robotic sex dolls, and that's going like way far down the pike, right? Where people are just going towards, they don't know how to do human intimacy. It's too complicated. It's too whatever. So I'll just work with this thing that's algorithmically designed to perfectly respond to me with no fights or arguments or dissonance. And it knows me well. That's an extreme version. That's a very extreme version of it, but there was something about the way, the capabilities maybe of what's happening in some of these technologies, and then some of the ways we've just gotten down in a pathway that this intimacy theme was, he was sort of pointing it out. But again, I'm not doing it justice. So maybe I shouldn't keep going in this direction.
Sheer bloody hubris of thinking that you can create something to perfectly respond to the demands of what you have at that particular moment. This perfectly responds to the desires I have at this particular moment. It's so short-sighted, isn't it? It's brilliant for capitalism, though. Yeah, go on. Amazon's going to recommend a little I don't know,
before you want it, right?
Well,
like they'll be like, I know you wanted this chocolate ice cream cone right now.
Yeah.
Andra Boudreau says, if nothing else, our current state is reminding me of how amazing and irreplaceable just being with real people in real time is.
Yes.
And then let's see, David Moore says licensure and liability hamstrings therapy to the point where they practically are AI autopilot supporters.
Ooh.
And that comment, the one of my criticisms of the way that mental health training is being done right now, at least in the program I was in, and I think it's going on in a lot of places and maybe all over the US, is the way that diagnosis is being treated for it, and treatment plans are being taught. It's for insurance. It's for easy coding. It's not for individual needs and benefit. So there was such a heavy, it really felt like at the end of the day, you could really be a technician. You're being trained to be a technician, not something deeper and more meaningful. And I could see that very easily being taken over by some kind of AI. And then
so creepy.
Yeah. Why is my thing not letting me scroll? S Koval 7, I think that's how you say your name, or have S Koval 7 prefers self-checkout and finds that the chances of delightful interactions with cashiers are low.
I love that response. I love that.
Yeah, talk to Josh Slocum about that. Josh Slocum really thinks that the people at the cash registers are terrible these days.
I think they're lovely. I always ask I just say the same thing every time. I always say, how's your day going so far? And it's amazing the responses you get and the conversations that you can have just in a moment with somebody. They'll say, oh, I'm almost done. And then you can ask if it's been busy, and then they'll tell you about something. And it's just a moment of conversation, but I usually enjoy them.
Leslie, I'm wondering how much did you go into that example and actually really try hard with that person that was there just
The
to prove
one, oh
hey,
gosh,
how are you doing? How's it going? Oh, you're looking lovely
no,
today.
that was actually just like this moment of perfect serendipity,
Yeah.
because the girl complimented my earrings right away. And it was just like this really sweet, bright, like, oh, those are really pretty. And then I told her where I got them. And then I said something about maybe her necklace or her hair or something like that. And then she was just like so happy to be engaging. And she just brightened up and she was super sweet. It was like this perfect moment of, yeah, I told you so. I couldn't have played. I should have slipped her a 20 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, let's see. Oh, okay. S Koval 7 says, unless you're the wrong guy, then you're being creepy. So I guess you could be creepy to the cashier.
That's the risk you play with human interaction there, right? That's the risk we have to play. Otherwise, AI takes over for us.
Yeah, and the idea of AI being crafted as some kind of a companion that knows all your needs and doesn't fight with you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would have to fight with you just the right amount, because without a little bit of tension,
There's no growth.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. And it's not I mean, it's really a kind of infantile narcissistic fantasy. This idea of the perfect partner who anticipates and meets all of your needs and never challenges you. And I do think that there are people who would go for that, because there's people that have traded in intimate relationships for pornography. And the problem with that is when you don't have the fights and you don't challenge one another, you don't grow, and you also don't resolve your underlying issues that you have left over from your family of origin, because most of us conveniently transport those into our marriages or long-term relationships, which is aggravating, but it's also an opportunity for healing that you're not going to get from, a blowjob giving robot that just, runs around doing things for you to service you.
And and branching off of that, somebody says, let's see, where was it? Somebody just said, oh, a guy in his room, men are already being fooled to send money to AI cam girls and not realizing it. And when I read that, I was thinking, well, but what is the fool? What's the fooling there? Because a cam girl, what's the difference at the user level of paying a real girl to pretend to be interested in you and paying a robot to interact with you as if it's a real girl? Pretend like there's already so many levels of fooling going on. The girl who's acting like she's interested in you enough to be seductive and stimulating, but is only doing it because you're paying her money. There's already deceit going on there. So how does that change when it's AI? What do you guys think about that?
I think people can fool themselves into thinking, oh, but she really likes me. I don't know.
Yes, that's absolutely.
I know she's acting for everybody else, but yeah.
But this android really likes me. It doesn't really work, does it?
Oh, no. What's sad too is I think they're starting to do, I don't know if it's in Japan or maybe I'm making that up, but imagining like so many, say, elderly people, maybe they're widowed, maybe they're just single, and then like we're going to get all these little AI little bots to keep them company because nobody really wants to go visit the old people. Like I get worried I'm going to be one of those people that's going to have some creepy robot because no one visits me.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so sad,
Well, so yeah, it's interesting. I want to think about this. I don't know. Does he really fool himself into thinking she really likes him? Is that really happening? Is that a necessary component of the paid of the sex work interaction?
It is for some people, but
Okay.
not for others.
And we still don't know how many of those would still quite happily live in I mean, we all live in denial to a certain extent. It's one of the plights of being human, but you can quite easily steer into denial if you just pretend that that isn't an AI or that isn't a robot. There's plenty of ways in which you can do that. So even those people that know that it's a robot can forget, I'm sure.
Well, but and then that would imply that there's something, okay, so I don't do this, I've not done it, but I have an idea of what it must be. You're paying somebody, a cam girl, you're paying them to interact with you like in a Zoom call where there's whatever nudity or sexual content or whatever's going on. But are there also some where you're just paying for access to their videos and they're not actually interacting with you? And at that point, does it matter if it was a real girl or if it was AI? Does that matter? Because she's not even really interacting with the user. But is it the idea that you're now being stimulated by some computer graphic image instead of a real person? And does that matter?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I don't use that kind of content, so I can't possibly imagine. And I don't know, I've never had that discussion with anybody.
Well, a guy in his room says it does matter. So I would love to hear more about that if you want to type it out.
I can't help feel there's, even if I don't know the answer, that it's like a gateway or a slippery slope to something else, right? Like you can con yourself on that. Then I don't know if you guys like watch Blade Runner 2049 and he's got literally a fully AI girlfriend that just sort of follows him as a holographic around the flat.
Or like Her. Remember the movie Her? And he had that operate, and she evolved like past him.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting. I saw this video of I guess you guys might have seen it. It was on Twitter. I saw it a few different times posted, of a girl at Whole Foods using her hand to pay. Did you see this? She's like, I'm going to try using my hand to pay for my groceries. And then she does it and she's like super happy. She's like, oh my God, it worked. Oh, this is so crazy. It's so cool. She's like really excited about it. And I just thought it was super strange. I don't know if that's her palm print, her fingerprints, she's got a chip.
Oh, she had a chip or something? Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't know what it is that's being scanned at that point. But then why would we be excited about the opportunities for ever increasing space between humans?
Yeah. I was thinking as well earlier, I think you said something earlier, Leslie, about having a conversation with someone, and I don't know I can't remember what it is you said, but I almost imagine sort of like a Black Mirror episode where someone is just literally searching Google for answers, or typing a question in, or kind of as they're talking to someone, just kind of, let me just before I answer this question, let me just make sure I'm not going to embarrass myself. What is the capital of so-and-so? Or just whatever, it's like, it's just exactly as you say, creating that space between people. And if people could start putting a chip in, that would mean that they constantly had a search engine or something like on hand to them. I mean, we're already doing it. We already interrupt conversations to look at our phone every 5 seconds or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's quite scary thinking about it.
It is. I always think of, I have this scene from the Terminator that runs through my mind. Remember the first Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
And he's got, like, when you it keeps flashing to his perspective, the Terminator's perspective, when people ask him questions, and he gets this multiple choice like grid superimposed over the world. And I always think about that, like the scanning for answers.
Mm-hmm.
And some people in the chat think you have the best laugh, Jennifer.
Oh, that's so nice, because I used to constantly get singled out by teachers in school because I was always the person that was laughing the loudest if anything happened. So I was forever getting told off and often sent out of the class. So thank you for that.
Someone said in the comments under the video that you and I did with Jenny Holland the other day that you curse very elegantly.
I saw that. I thought that was so funny. I love that.
You need to put that in your Twitter bio. Curses elegantly.
I've had a lot of practice, let me tell you.
See, AI couldn't do that.
That's right. I believe in swearing often
You have
and
to
forcefully.
curse in the style of Jennifer Friend.
Yeah,
That has to be the prompt.
that's the AI prompts. Yeah.
Oh, Jay Bourne says that was me. That's nice. Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, yeah. S Koval 7, when people have money, they generally use it to isolate, live behind gates, etc.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. There's some real truth to that, I think.
Yeah, it just makes me think of that, like, is it that final few scenes or something like that in that movie Wally as well, where like humans have become so evolved and advanced that they're just these kind of like blubbering kind of fatties, just like moving around on these things that hover for them, and then as soon as they think or want something, some bot arrives to give them their gigantic Coke or something. And they're probably, I don't know if the X-rated version of Wally probably has an android underneath the desk as well, but maybe something like that. But it's, yeah, X-rated Wally. That's maybe, yet to come.
Yeah.
Our contact Disney.
What a thought.
Well, yeah. It's really, it is interesting. I know we've sort of talked about this before, but I know I've brought it up before. When I was in, I guess it was in the earlier 2000s, and I was in undergrad, I was studying social psychology, and this concept was being talked about quite a bit that I've not heard talked about since. And it's the concept of Nomi, which is like being, having no sense of place and being sort of disconnected from meaning and culture in society, having no sense of purpose or value in life, and that this was going to be a problem of the next generation. This was the idea that was being talked about. And I wish people would talk about this more, because I think that it is a massive problem right now. And I think it's this lack of belonging and purpose is leading people into some weird places. Like, if you spin it positively, you would say that once all of these base needs are met, you can think about other things. But what are those other things? It seems like they're endlessly navel gazing and picking apart of the self, prophilicity, the sense of like, just who am I in a narcissistic way, mirror reflecting. Or is it breaking down of things, like when we break down gender and we have to wonder about these things that previously we didn't think about? But also there's this propensity for hedonism. So we can go into, I don't need anything because I've already got food, I've got shelter. Let me entertain myself. Let me just entertain and watch porn and eat whatever I want. And I don't know, what are we doing? How many people are falling down this hole? And how do you live a life of any value when you don't have to do anything?
It's a problem too, when, excuse me, when you think about product design, inventions, I mean, so much, this notion of convenience too, right? Like this idea of a frictionless world where that's like a good thing. So even though they haven't managed to do that with like call centers, like that's the worst thing you call to get help and you can't get anybody. It's a nightmare and you want to shoot somebody. But otherwise, this notion like that leads to this never having a challenge, just getting what I want when I want, and like reinforcing that. And I see so many people trying to design things for more and more ease or touchless or peopleless or handy, like that sort of thing, which again, in terms of it, people just being these sort of passive, like the Wally, just like sitting there, making more needs because you don't have any real ones, right? I just don't like any of it. This, again, that theme I had of like losing capacity, losing drive, and you said like purpose too, like having anything that you even need to do. People, maybe nobody even needs you anymore because you could just get stuff from delivered.
Yeah.
JC Daedalus says people who don't seek out meaning are already being self-destructive. Without any serious, meaningful life goal, people are just consumers.
It's really interesting. I wonder too if some of this, the appeal of having everything super convenient and the whole idea of that is maybe some of the appeal, and where we get hooked into that is our own fear of our own needs and the fact that none of us are truly independent. We're all interdependent. And maybe there's some fear that comes up with that of what if my needs are not met? What if people let me down? What if people reject me, or I harm my relationships in some way so people aren't there for me? If I alienate all my family members and none of them want to take care of me, maybe this robot can come and take care of me in my elder years. You know, I think there's some, because it just is interesting, that point that the other listener made about how when people get money, they start isolating themselves. And it's true, you start moving to a gated community. All of these things, there's less reliance on neighbors. If you see a country if you visit a country that's a bit more poor and less developed, you see that all of the neighbors clearly maintain their ties and their interactions with each other because it's necessary for survival. But with that also comes a greater sense of connection and enjoyment.
Mm.
And of course, some attendant conflict.
You know what's really interesting about that is that it seems like the underlying value or need that's being addressed in that case is the need for permanence and security, because human relationships are inherently impermanent and insecure. There's always this question of, there's always a need to rebalance, recalibrate, work, try, continue to give input. And there's always the chaotic potential that if your need is based on another person fulfilling it, they may choose not to, or become unable to fulfill that need for you for whatever reason. They may lack capacity or willingness to continue to fill that need for you. But if you can engineer something that doesn't have that chaotic potential, then you have security. So this kind of goes back to that issue that came up a lot with COVID was, would you rather be safe or would you rather be free? You know, the security, would you rather have, you know, you want to have a completely locked down, predictable safety, or do you want the chaotic potential of danger, but also freedom and ability to choose? So with the person who, if we take this hypothetical rich person who then locks themselves behind, isolates, what are they doing? They're actually creating less chaotic potential in their life. They're trying to control for chaos. They're trying to create more security.
But there's no acknowledgement, is there, in the safety option? If you choose safety over freedom, there's nowhere near enough acknowledgement of the long-term issues that will come with that, with the ever-increasing need to create predictability. You know, every small piece of chaos will look vastly more chaotic because you'll become less resilient. You'll need to your efforts to kind of police and rule over your area will be ever more needed. And we don't discuss the longer term things. We're probably going to start seeing the longer term things. I mean, maybe some of the outcomes for kind of kids that were taken away from their social groups and education systems and things like that, maybe we'll start to see some of it then. But yeah, this is a problem that's going to get worse, but we're not going to be able to talk about the longer term problems with choosing safety. It's not safety, it's turning yourself into some gloopy mass that's got no defining features to it because you don't really know who you are anymore. You've lost your purpose. I don't know.
Now, this really ties, I'm not going to go off on this tangent entirely, but I might mention it. I put it in our community, our locals community. Matthew Crawford just wrote a piece on, how would I describe it? The combination of sort of wokeness and this managerialism, and the managerialism, like we can just control everything, we can measure everything, let's track and surveil everything so that we either have the convenience or the safety. And then the way we've made people look to the state, because they were saying we keep imagining everyone is so vulnerable, and we kind of almost want to hold them as vulnerable or almost have them be vulnerable. So then we have a reason for the state to do all the controlling. It was a very interesting piece. It's kind of a whole like other topic, but it does go back to, again, that sort of, maybe we've had the luxury, when you're in a poorer country or whatever, you don't even have the luxury of trying to be safe. You know what I mean? Like you're just up against the elements in whatever form it is, whether it's nature is quite rough, or it's a rough neighborhood or something like that. And then when people get wealthy enough, they can start to even think about these things, but it is insulating. So there's the trade-off, there. And then the other thing, I think the other way people try to, we sort of said it, but I'll say it more explicitly, like the other way people try to protect themselves is being more transactional, right? Like if you can just do the transaction with the cam girl, right? Like she's not really going to hurt you. If it's like everything's a one-time, a one-time thing I can buy of an experience, like then you can accumulate these experiences, but you don't necessarily have all these risks, because it's like that one's done, on to the next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And at the end, like the logical conclusion is just computers interacting with each other.
Oof.
That's so, oh my gosh, that's so nihilistic and frightening. You know what really freaks me out? And I don't know where they are in their development of this, but if you've read anything about the development of artificial wombs in order to free women from the burden of pregnancy. I mean, my God, talk about distancing us from our true natures. There's just nothing more mechanistic than that. And, because God forbid that we slow down for a few months and maybe aren't as productive and aren't helping to, be part of the larger tax base or something. I mean, stuff like that. I just feel like, don't do us any favors, okay?
Isn't that a response to I was talking with somebody the other day, and it was like, somebody that like a reasonable person, let's just say, somebody that I was surprised to hear this from. And this was about fertility, like had a question about fertility, and this person made some really offhanded comment about how, no, you can just have a baby another way. There's lots of ways to have a baby. And I'm like, have we really gotten to that point? Have we? I don't think we have. I mean, have we? I didn't realize that we were thinking of this as something that's so interchangeable.
I think that our idea of morality now in the West is based on the notion that what's moral is for people to get what they want. And to interfere with that is the greatest form of immorality. And so there's no acceptance of, we have to make certain trades in life. We have to make difficult decisions. It's, you can get what you want and have everything you want, and to not do everything to support that is immoral. That's why we have those articles recently about the biological males who are given medicine to help make them lactate so they can have the experience of breastfeeding an infant, because that's what they want, and you mustn't interfere with what somebody wants. You must facilitate their wants. And so I see AI and all of our sort of technology as being potentially used towards those ends, sometimes for good and sometimes for ill.
But it's only your superficial wants.
Yeah. The whole time I was thinking that, I was like, who the fuck really knows what they want? Who really knows what they want? It's just gonna
certainly do.
Yeah,
We don't know
gotcha.
we don't know what's good for us, that's for sure.
Well, and
Mhm.
like looking at the word want too, what does want? Want could be lack, right? What I lack, you could use the word that way. It could be what's good for me, at what point do you want? Like right now, maybe I want a bag of Doritos, but I also want to be in good shape. And so your goals at what level of want are we talking? And I want to be able, I got this lactating man thing is really, that's super, super disturbing to me, because not only are you're giving someone hormones, we know hormones are powerful in the body, and you're giving them hormones so that they will produce something akin to human milk that will go into the body of a tiny, tiny person and be laden with the drug that you have just given to this other person that had such a profound effect on this adult human that it produced a counter sex reaction in the body. So what the heck is it doing to that baby? At this point, the primary goal here should be feeding a child. But now the
Right.
primary goal is satisfying some vain desire of an adult using the child in order to facilitate that. So that's freaking crazy.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting to me too, that with all of the endless obsession with women's bodies and what we are or are not doing with our bodies, there's tremendous pressure on women to breastfeed. And it's number one, it's not possible for all women. And number two, there's reasons why some women do not wish to. Okay, so it's healthier is the reason allegedly why there's so much obsession and even aggression towards women about you've got to breastfeed. But then where is all that concern when a man decides that a biological male decides that he wants to take these hormones so that he can have the experience of feeling like a woman and breastfeeding an infant? And as you say, all of that is getting into the infant and doing what we don't know. It's just interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, it is
To me.
interesting. A lot of contradiction.
A lot of contradiction. And I still think there's just a great, despite our, our ideas of people have to get what they want, there is still something very, there is a way in which society is preoccupied with women's bodies that we are not preoccupied with men's bodies.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is underneath of it all?
I think it has to do, my gut level instinct, I could be totally wrong, so just take it for what it's worth. My gut level instinct is that women are very compelling sexually. And so I think it comes from a sort of sexual impulse, but then I think it also comes from because that's so powerful, I think there's ideas of controlling it. Like for whatever you think about the ethics of, if abortion should be legal or if a person should have an abortion. What's really interesting to me is all these states where you can't have an abortion after, say, 6 weeks, which is usually around the time that a woman even has a chance to discover that she's pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that at that point, it's an embryo, not a fetus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not commenting either way on the value of that embryo. What I'm commenting on is the fact that there's all these fertility clinics with thousands of embryos. And most of the people who are advocating against abortion are not trying to shut down all of those clinics with all of those embryos. Most of those embryos will be discarded at some point. And they asked a senator about it even. Somebody asked that question. He said, oh no, it only counts if it's in a woman's body. But it's literally the same thing. The embryo in the woman or the embryo in the little dish or tube or whatever that will or will not be implanted in the woman. It is indeed the same thing. So it's just interesting to me.
That's fascinating. I think
Yeah.
we should have a whole discussion on pregnancy ethics and this whole concept. Surrogacy. Yeah, I think we should have a.
Oh yeah,
we should
that's an
go into
interesting
that.
one.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if at some level, what you're saying about the woman and the what women's bodies represent, if this doesn't also come down to the desire to control for chaos and take something out of the potential and turn it into the actual by controlling it.
Mhm. I do think that, because I think women, the fact that we are, we carry life, we bring forth life in a way that's, it's something obviously beautiful. It is also something chaotic and wild and creative and uncontrollable. You don't know what you're giving birth to. And we're also this sort of chaotic potential in terms of, sexual desire and what that awakens in other people and everything that follows that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people sometimes, it's sort of like a gateway to the entire cosmos, which is, of course, endless possibility, and it's also chaos. And so I think that's sort of why there's a lot of focus too on trying to control women and women's bodies and how sexually we present ourselves, or how, not sexually we present ourselves. And and I think women pay a lot of, I think we carry physically and emotionally a very heavy burden because of that. That's a weird offshoot of this conversation, but that's just where my mind went. So welcome to the labyrinth of my skull.
I like it. And I want to talk about this in more detail. I want to really, it's so interesting how these conversations evolve when you just let them. It's like a game of telephone, AI bots all the way to the gateway to the universe.
It does make sense, because if we're talking about like these extremes of this disembodied ones and zeros, like you always talk about, Leslie, versus like the most human, visceral, embodied thing, giving birth or whatever, right? Like, and it seems like it's a battle for our humanity that's kind of going on. Like, does our humanity have any value? And what better representation of it is, or it's not the only one, but of this even possibility to conceive, give birth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the transhumanism topic, all of it. Yeah. Well, what's one thing you guys are looking forward to this week? Anything good?
Oh, I have a class tonight at, it's a Zoom class of mindfulness and Qigong that I'm doing this evening. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That sounds nice. David, anything for you?
I had an exam earlier today, so I'm looking forward to a bit of a lie-in tomorrow. Can you believe it? Yeah, I'm gonna have a little lie-in and sort of sort out my flat a bit more, because I've just moved into it. Nothing too exciting this week though. Yeah. I might. Do you know what I've been thinking about? There's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym just down the road, and I've been talking to enough people now about the benefits of martial arts and stuff. Now I've told you guys, it's probably statistically made it less likely I'm actually going to go along now, because I've got the satisfaction of telling you. So maybe my body will be like, oh, that's enough of a satisfaction. The motivation has now been waned as a result of me telling you, but hopefully I'll go and I can tell you all about it. Maybe you can ask me about it next week and I'll say that I've been.
I wish we had more time. We could practice motivational interviewing and see if we can make David more likely to do his jiu-jitsu.
Hey, if you go, you can show us some moves next time.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Not sure that's motivational though. Me having to stay on a live stream.
I'm going to do the masculine move, and I'm just going to dare you to do it.
I like it.
Call me a chicken if I don't do it.
Yeah,
right?
You're going to be a winner. If you don't do it, I'm going to be really unimpressed with you. I'm going to go down a few notches in my estimation.
Deborah's been coming to some of the groups that I've been having, and she's now a fully fledged honorary man's every 7 o'clock UK time on Tuesday. Deborah's, so thanks for representing that, Deborah. I appreciate that.
be an honorary man. I want to be the woman at the men's group. It's okay.
Deborah, what's one thing you're looking forward to this week?
Honestly, I don't have anything planned, and I'm kind of coming down with something, so I
Oh, no.
don't know if I'm even going to be out doing anything. What was good? How about you?
I have a belated birthday party today. So my girlfriends and we get together for our birthdays. So we have lots of opportunities to go out throughout the year, because there's a bunch of us. It's like, depending on the day, 6 to 8 of us. But so that's a bunch of birthdays. So it's my turn, and we decided that we're going to dress fancy. So that'll be fun. We're gonna go out and doll up and have a nice time. So yeah.
You've probably got the chats and everybody listening to this absolutely going now, Leslie. Imagine you in a fancy outfit.
Oh gosh.
Sorry,
Well, and you doing jujitsu right there. You've got the frame for it. So just get behind your chair and then just all right, you guys. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat.
Thank you.